What's up, y'all? Welcome into another edition of DNVR Rams Live, presented by our friends at Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use the code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Hope everybody had a solid holiday weekend. It's been a while since we've gone live because of the Thanksgiving schedule, everything going on. We haven't gone live since last Wednesday. We've got a ton to dive into. We've got some hoops to break down. Solid showing overall, I would say, from CSU men's basketball out in the battle for Atlantis. We'll get into that a little later on in the show. We're going to be pretty football heavy today with Jim Mora being introduced as head coach later this afternoon. I'll be there. Our guy Ryan Green will be there. Lots of content to follow, so make sure you keep up with all of that. I'm really excited for this week. I'm going to have a ton of written content to get into as well. With the chaos of the schedule and then, the avalanche factored in as well. I haven't been able to do as much long form writing as I typically do. That's the stuff I love the most. So I'm really looking forward to getting into all that, especially with signing day coming up, and we'll dive into the portal stuff and all kinds of different things. We're going to have a lot of angles to hit over the next 6 weeks or so. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the high school signing period and the transfer portal period being two separate ordeals as well. I felt like it was kind of content overload right before Christmas these last couple of years. So I like that the calendar has changed on that. We'll get into the updated power ranking. I'll give all kinds of thoughts on stuff today. I have such a loaded schedule. It's going to be tough to get it all in. So I'm going to do my best to stay on task here. If you're tuned in live on YouTube, I certainly appreciate you. Give us a thumbs up, say good morning in the Toyota chat. Keep it popping, keep it civil, though. Always great to see so many people engaged. I will be at the presser today. Yes, CSU Rams Daily. I will be there this afternoon. I want to start just with a couple of thoughts on a really chaotic sports weekend as a whole. First of all, we finally, mercifully, got a resolution to what Lane Kiffin is going to do. He is, in fact, going to LSU. I had talked a lot about how he was a big domino in all of this. And now that he has finally made a decision, I think we'll see quite a few schools make moves over the coming days. We've already seen, Florida adjust with John Summerall. I imagine we'll see Penn State make a move at some point. All kinds of openings to be filled. I really do feel like CSU hired Jim Mora at a very opportune time, especially now that, Michigan State is open, Memphis is open with their coach going to Arkansas, South Florida's open. I mean, there's some really attractive jobs, and for CSU to get this done when they did, I really feel like that was a win for the program. I've said it a few times. I thought that Jim Mora would be a Power 4 candidate this time around just because what he did at UConn was so dang impressive. As far as the Lane Kiffin stuff goes, I think it's crazy that we had such an insane storyline. I guess we shouldn't be surprised given his personality. He has not changed a bit since that debacle with Tennessee and USC and everything that's happened. I think Al Davis hit him right on the head. He nailed that one with his assessment of Lane Kiffin, called him like a master liar or something of the equivalent. But I do think he's one of the most self-indulgent individuals in all of college football. I do think he's great for content. I think he's fun to talk about, but this got a little bit ridiculous, and it feels representative of what the game is today, which is pretty much soulless. I tweeted this yesterday, but it just feels like college football has really leaned into the seediness and in a very open way. LSU's an incredible job. I understand it. Probably one of the top 5 gigs in all of football when you factor in resources, when you factor in local recruiting pool and all of that type of stuff, just commitment to football in general. It's also one of the toughest places to win. Brian Kelly got run out of town real quick. The grass is not always greener. We'll see how that plays out in the end. Just the concept of a head coach being willing to walk away from a playoff team to go to a school because he believes that is where he will have the best opportunity to win in the playoff. The logic of that is a little bit tough for me to comprehend. I get it, in a 10-year sample period, you probably have a better chance to win more titles at LSU, but I also feel like he had it all at Ole Miss. I mean, they certainly can swim with anybody financially. They've really invested. They gave him whatever he wanted. I don't know. It feels like you're walking away from a place where you could have had a statue in 10 years to potentially end up getting run out of town in LSU. I'd be surprised if he's a total disaster there. He is a really good college football coach, but just an insane saga. And as Aaron is asking here in the Toyota chat, is this the craziest coaching carousel we've seen in the last 10 years? I think so. I think this is the most chaotic coaching carousel that I have ever seen. I think it's only going to get weirder too, which is again why I'm so relieved that CSU is through this process. Jay wants to know if we have any insights on who Jim Mora will bring on the staff. From what I've heard, if the UConn OC, who is currently the interim head coach for the Huskies, if he gets the head time or if he gets the head coaching gig full time at UConn, that's one thing. If not, he will be the OC with Jim Mora here at CSU. If it's not him, we shall see. But he, in my estimation, is probably the leading candidate, assuming, of course, that UConn does not give him the gig full time, which they very well may be, because the offense has been awesome these last couple of years for them. If you missed it, the Mountain West Championship is set. Boise State will be hosting UNLV. Hilarious that in a year where Boise was the definition of average, they still get to host the title game. I feel really bad for New Mexico. I feel like they got a raw deal. When you look at the head-to-head results of those four teams tied at the top, San Diego State, New Mexico, UNLV, and Boise, they were 2-1. Along with Boise, San Diego State was 1-1. UNLV was 0-2. They didn't beat anybody in the top. I understand the tiebreaker has been set for a couple years. I've seen a lot of people speculate and make comments like New Mexico was intentionally left out for UNLV or it's a conspiracy or something like that to make UNLV, who is now the face of the Mountain West, look good. I understand all of that. It's just based on an average of a couple of different metrics, but I feel like when you have head-to-head results, New Mexico beat UNLV straight up in their building. To lean on predictive metrics as a tiebreaker is disappointing. I understand in an unbalanced schedule, it's imperfect. There's no way to do it that can't come up with a possible downfall. You know, every way you do it, there's going to be some way that potentially results in a quirky scenario. I get that. But New Mexico, with what they've done this year, with how they closed the season, beating San Diego State, one of those top four teams to close out the season, really feel like they deserved a chance to play for a conference title. It is what it is. You can't now go against the tiebreakers that you have set in place. I saw some national people throwing out scenarios where the ACC should essentially throw out their rule book and do whatever they can to get Miami in the playoff. I get it's big business. I understand all of that, but you can't do that. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. I had a lot of fun these last couple of days. There was a lot to dive into. I had a lot of fun watching hoops. The Air Force game is what it is. We'll talk about that momentarily in a few minutes here. I did want to give a couple of thoughts on something that turned into a kind of a cluster unexpectedly. I had an awkward post-game interaction with Tyson Summers, the interim head coach. I asked him, after he had been highly complimentary, if he would be open to the possibility of staying at CSU on staff. He was very much offended by the question. I think the timing of it bothered him more than anything. I'm probably not going to have another opportunity to ask him the question is the thing. I felt like it was appropriate given all of the things he said about CSU. He's talking about how he feels like they're so close to turning the corner and they got all these talented young players. Well, you would like to stay and be a part of that then, I would think. But he repeatedly said he wished that I hadn't asked the question. I posted about that on Twitter. That drew a weird response from the sports information director for the CSU football program, Jeff Schmidt. I'm not going to make it this whole dramatic ordeal. I think when you have potential beef or whatever, beef's not even the right word. If you have something you need to resolve, the professional thing to do is to do it privately. The only reason I'm addressing it is because he quote tweeted me and made a comment about how I hadn't asked Tyson Summers a question in 4 weeks. Therefore, I am somehow like in the wrong for asking him what I did. I would point out that if if you have to have been at every single availability, if you had to ask him questions every single day to be eligible to participate in postgame, Kevin Lytle, I think, would be the only eligible person. I was at 8 games in person this year. I worked my ass off to cover CSU when, frankly, the business side of things, it would be far better for my career to do the pro sports only route. I don't want to do that. I have always strived to provide CSU fans with the type of coverage that I always craved as a CSU fan growing up, and didn't feel like we ever got. And frankly, outside of outlets like DNVR and the Coloradoan, which is a phenomenal local newspaper, and you guys know how much love and respect I have for Kevin Lytle, would never say anything bad about Kevin, frankly. But I guess all I'll say is, and again, I don't want to make this some big dramatic ordeal, is I don't really understand them coming at me. I kind of felt like the 50 Cent meme, what do you say fuck 50 for? I just didn't really get that. I would assume that an athletic department, a football program who struggles to get consistent coverage around the state when they're good, there weren't that many of us that went out to Tucson for the Arizona Bowl in an 8-win season, would be thankful and appreciative of the dedication of DNVR and what I've done specifically to provide coverage for this program over the last decade. Don't feel like I deserved any of that, but it is what it is. I've had a pretty good relationship with the CSU comms department for the most part over the last couple of years. Not surprising that in a really bad season, things might get a little bit testy. Our jobs inherently are going to clash every now and then. But that's really all I have to say on all of it. Again, I don't think it's like some big dramatic ordeal. Like, I'm not trying to make it something deeper than it is. I was really just confused by it. I did not have a lot of questions for Tyson Summers, admittedly, over the last couple of weeks. I drove up to Laramie for the border war, watched him lose 28-0 in the only game that mattered. I said this post game. I've said it a couple of times, but I felt like there was a total lack of accountability. He got a little testy when I asked him about quarterbacks that night, and generally the response to most of the questions was, what are we supposed to do? It's been a really bad year. We're a bad team. And while I do think that there's some truth to that, and I think that it's a pretty tough position to be in, I don't know, to have an interim head coach of all people who didn't win a single game, I'll add, to have that be like what causes a potential riff was very surprising to me. I did not understand the reaction to that really on either side, but we'll move past it. Like I said, it's just part of the gig. I've clashed with SIDs before. I will clash with SIDs again. It's their job to, defend CSU, I suppose. Again, like, of all people, you're going to come at me. Like, did you come at the Denver Post when they're writing, hit columns on Henry Blackburn? Or, I'm pretty sure Channel 7 this past weekend, according to a couple people who reached out to me, they aired the question I asked and ripped Tyson Summers' response. Do they get an angry tweet too? I don't know. It was just a really, really weird deal. And ultimately, I don't expect Tyson Summers to be kept on, but I do think that he is a good defensive coordinator, which is the ironic part about all of this. Is the question was well intended. It was rooted in the theory that your defense was marred by injury this year and still produced pretty decent results in most of the games. There were a couple of tough ones. Despite the fact that the offense could not sustain anything, you were put in a really brutal spot. But alas, here we are. Sometimes, the questions aren't received the way you intend. And sometimes, people react to things I ask, and that's fine. I don't expect CSU to love every single thing I say. I don't expect them to agree with every question I ask. I don't expect Tyson Summers to even like me, frankly. He doesn't have to. I was highly critical of the team under him because they were highly underwhelming. They lost every game, lost both trophy games. The offense was a disaster. There was not a lot of positive to say. And while I definitely turned my attention to hoops more so these last couple of weeks, I think most of the audience did too. Is there really that much we want to hear me dwell on and on about? Like, what else am I supposed to ask? Does it suck to lose this many games? Yes, it does. Like, I didn't have anything else to ask. So that's all the context on that. Again, the only reason I'm even bringing it up is because it became a thing publicly. Typically, I would prefer to have anything like this just be resolved privately. Hopefully in the future it is. become a DNVR diehard. Right now we have an awesome sale, just $26. You get a free t-shirt when you sign up of your choice, whichever one you want. You get access to all of our premium content. Take advantage of the Cyber Monday sale. Also, check out the DNVR locker. All of our merch, at least 30% off, up to 90% off. The Trey McBride shirt, I think we might only have it in XL at this point. You can pick that one up for like $7. He's having a Hall of Fame trajectory right now in the NFL. Rep our guy, rep the Rams. Check out all the stuff. We've got mugs. We've got all kinds of cool stuff. Don't miss out on these deals. We're going to keep this rolling. Shout out to everybody rocking with us live on YouTube. Again, if you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up, I certainly would appreciate it. Let me shout out a couple of our awesome partners, and we will keep the party rolling. Aura Frames is the answer to every holiday gifting moment. Never struggle again to find the perfect holiday gift. I have an Aura frame. Shout out to them. They sent me one. These things are pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. I was a little bit skeptical. Felt like kind of a mom gift. Maybe it was something I would give to my mom. Then very quickly, I was like, wait, this thing is pretty neat. You can upload photos and videos. You just plug it into your wall all day. Cycle through some of your favorite photos or some of your favorite memories. It is an awesome gift option, though, with the holiday season coming up, for the loved one in your life. I know that my mom, she loves seeing photos of me and my brother and our significant others and my dog, Indy, and everything else. This is the perfect gift for somebody in your life. And for a limited time, you can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com. Get $35 off Aura Frames' best-selling Carver mat frames, named #1 by Wirecutter by using the promo code DNVR at checkout. That's auraframes.com. Use the code DNVR. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions do apply. Again, $35 off with that code DNVR. I also want to shout out the homies at Branded Bills. Whether you need snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees, Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. If you're looking for gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. Start your order. Their dedicated team will help you with the exact custom apparel you need. They've got a partnership with CSU, which is awesome. I know I've seen some CSU branded Bills hats in the bookstore, which is pretty cool. But why would you not want to save some money? Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Check out everything that they have to offer. They've got a lot of great styles. All right. Aaron says, Justin, if you need a hug, we're here for you. I think we all need a hug every now and then, right? I'm not too proud to admit that. But this wasn't that big of a deal. It was total non-story. That's why I don't understand why it turned into a dramatic thing. I was not upset that Tyson did not like my question. I was just surprised by it, which is why I was commenting on it, because I assumed that when people watched the presser, they were going to be like, wow, that was a really weird reaction to a very not antagonizing or aggressive question. Last thing I'm going to say on it. Boom, we're moved on. Let's talk about the game itself against Air Force, which was, this game had every little annoying quirk that you get when you play Air Force. They start with a fake punt, just a couple of minutes in, you feel like you're going to get off the field. Nope, fake punt, keep the drive going, go right down the field to put 7 on the board. They had a 17-play scoring drive at one point without a single pass attempt. They also had multiple passing touchdowns, because that's just the way that it goes. You'll deal with 50 rushing attempts and they'll throw 3 times, but 2 of them end up in the end zone. That's what it's like playing Air Force. That's why they have been a thorn in CSU's side. All the credit to that program. They have absolutely owned CSU far more than CU. That's the ironic thing. Air Force, at least in the last 20 years, like CSU struggled against CU as well. They've struggled against everybody in matchups that matter. But Air Force was tough even for Sonny. I mean, we haven't won multiple games in a row against them since the early 2000s. It's crazy the success that they've had, and it's really gone up a level since Troy Calhoun has taken over that program. Shoot, now that was close to 20 years ago, but he especially has owned CSU. That's why I thought it was kind of funny that he so openly was like, I don't want to keep playing this game. They've got way more NIL than we do, and that's true, but it hasn't made one bit of difference. CSU's always had the talent and the athlete advantage in this matchup. Air Force is tougher. They're better disciplined. They execute with more consistency. And they came into Fort Collins and they really were in total control of this game throughout. Credit CSU for finding a little bit of offensive spark, albeit Air Force's defense is awful. They've gotten torched by everybody this year. They've been a little bit better in league play than they were in the non-conference slate. But this game was never in doubt for Air Force, in my opinion. They win ultimately 42-21. CSU closes out the Mountain West era in a fitting fashion after really underwhelming for the majority of the last 2 decades. CSU was one of the Mountain West's original founders. They won 3 of the first 4 Mountain West titles, never won one again after that, which is pretty absurd when you think about it. I will not miss playing Air Force at all. CD6 says, I'm good not playing Air Force until 2050. It's not going to be a matchup we see regularly, at least in football. Maybe you play them in basketball. It's more or less like playing a team like DU, although obviously we've seen how that can go as well. But yeah, I mean, Air Force fans, they're not going to miss playing CSU because they don't care. I have Air Force fans in my life. The success they've had over CSU, really the success they've had in the Mountain West as a whole, it means absolutely nothing to them. All Air Force fans care about is how did they perform in the commander-in-chief matchups? Did we beat Navy? Did we beat Army? If we win 8 games, if we dominate CSU year after year, it doesn't mean anything to them. They don't care. And CSU, if you're being honest with yourself, if you played Air Force, CU, and Wyoming, all 3 of them in a season, you can only beat 2. You're taking CU and Wyoming every single time. Sure, you'd love to beat Air Force. It was fun beating them last year. But I thought it was hilarious after the game to see like 3 Air Force players half-heartedly trot to go pick up the Ram Falcon trophy. It was almost like they remembered, oh yeah, this is a trophy game. We got to go get it. It's not like they won and everybody, sprinted to the corner to go pick it up. Like guys were leisurely walking onto the field to go shake hands. A little group of 3 to 4 dudes trotted over to pick it up like it was them, doing just something part of their job, not something they were stoked about. As Brian says, you can't lose to rivals if you never play them, but that's really my point, is that they're not a rival. You don't have any true history outside of the Mountain West. You're in state, but by that definition, is Northern Colorado a rival just simply because they're in state? No. Is UNLV or New Mexico a rival simply because you're in the same conference? Not necessarily. And both schools have teams that they would prioritize far more, I guess is the point here. Shout out to our guy Jace for joining the DNVR supporters club. Much love. You get access to like unique emojis, all kinds of stuff. You get access to all of our unique content. So it might be on the Broncos side because we're overlapping with them right now. But if you are in here, I want to make sure you get the love that you deserve. I don't have a ton of takeaways from the Air Force game itself. I don't think anybody really cares. It was the end of a disappointing, irrelevant season between both teams. Good for Rocky Beers. It's objectively hilarious that a school that's had Trey McBride, that's had Joel Dreesen, that's had Kelly McGregor, Corey Sperry, Crockett Gilmore, so many great tight ends over the years. It ends up being Rocky Beers. And no offense to him, because he's a very, very talented player. But in a 2-10 season that almost everybody is going to hope to forget, Rocky Beers scores 7 receiving touchdowns. Never forget how Steve Adazio in a 12-game season was able to get him 1 receiving touchdown, and it took a fake punt rushing attempt to get him his 2nd touchdown of the year when he won the Biletnikoff. Absolutely absurd. Yeah, good for him. Good for Owen Long. He finishes the season with 151 total tackles. That leads the FBS. Admirable stuff from Jackson Brousseau, and highly critical of his play. It's not his fault. He got thrown into a horrible situation. Good dude. He could have very easily thrown in the towel. He played hurt, and he played pretty well, all things considered, in that game. The difference, Air Force, 316 yards. CSU had 12 on the ground. 316 rushing yards to 12. Air Force. CSU gets that initial stop on 3rd down. From that point forward, Air Force proceeds to go 11 of 14 on 3rd down. They were 3 of 3 on 3rd down. They punted once in the game. They made the red zone 5 times. They scored touchdowns on all 5 trips. And they had almost 41 minutes of total possession. Very easy to understand why this game played out the way that it did. Again, end of the Mountain West era felt fitting after the last 20 years. That's all we got to say, though. I think we can move on. Let's get into the 2025 season as a whole. Let's look at this more through a big picture lens, and then let's get into those top 10 guys who I think Jim Mora should prioritize when it comes to retention. There's no guarantee. I think a couple of these guys we're going to throw out are going to have serious cash offered their way. If they leave, it's tough to blame them, especially guys when they have legitimate P4 chances. But you never know. I mean, Jim Mora's obviously has a great track record. Hang on one sec. Phone thought I was talking to the whatever. I don't want to say it because then it's going to think I'm talking to it again. All right, let's get into it. Big picture stuff. This season really died in September. We talked so much for months and months from the spring on, basically as soon as we had the non-conference dates set. I talked about the importance of getting off to a hot start. September has been dreadful. Really going back to 2014, that was the last time like the Rams had a decent start to the year. They just, every year, you have all this preseason excitement, and then you lose the win from your sales before we even get to October. Really, it probably died week 2 against Northern Colorado. They had a chance to redeem themselves against UTSA or Washington State. You fall short on the 2-point attempt, get throttled by Wazoo, and it was over. I mean, it really was over then. It's crazy to think. I know they had the fluky win over Fresno State, which is still the most shocking result maybe in the league this entire season. They finished 8-4. The Rams thumped them, but the season was over in September. The importance of hitting the ground running next year for Jim Mora is it's going to be massive. Like, you have to capitalize on this momentum of going into the Pac-12, new coach, all that. You open against Wyoming, so if you can get the bronze boot in week 1, you have a chance to set things in motion and get things going in the right direction, which has just been a consistent issue for the Rams. These slow starts, these holes that they bury themselves in, it makes it really tough to have a successful season. I know they ended up grinding out 8 wins in 2024, but when you look at the majority of the last decade, that just hasn't been the case. I know that there were a lot of factors in the offensive struggles this year. Injuries were a major factor on both sides of the ball, and I do want to add that. CSU had 50 unique starters at various points this year. That's insane. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. That's an area where you're going to have to do some reflection over the offseason when it comes to training, recovery. You got to change something. Maybe considering you're going to have to change the branding on the turf anyways, probably a good time to replace it. It's been close to a decade. That's expensive, but I mean, you can't win when you're having injuries the way that they do. I don't know that the turf is responsible. Again, I just think you want to explore all potential possibilities. That's a good question. Bowser says, should CSU have kept Norvell through the season, or was firing him the best call? I would say competitively, in terms of winning more games this year, yeah, if you kept Norvell around, I think you had a better chance of maybe going 4-8 instead of 2-10. Based on the injuries, based on the struggles at quarterback, I don't think it would have been a bowl season or anything like that. And frankly, going back to what I said earlier about the timing of CSU hiring Jim Mora being important, if you allow Norvell to coach the rest of the season, I don't know if you're in a position to hire Mora at the time that you did. And then maybe you don't end up with the same quality coach. So I think you could make an argument that competitively it did little to help your chances this year. I also think realistically, this was essentially a lost season. And because of that, in the long run, you probably benefit more from losing a couple more games in 2025, getting the hire hopefully right. There's no guarantees, but it feels like a solid decision. And then, moving forward, you've got to win, because the standard is going to be to win now. I was very surprised to see some of the stuff in Kevin Lytle's most recent report regarding Jim Mora's contract. We're basically paying him what he was making at UConn. Big up in the assistant pool. I mean, $5 million for an assistant pool is more than some P4 schools. So the resources are there. They want to win now. And I think if they can retain a couple of key players, I think if they can hit in the portal, especially on a quarterback, they're going to have an opportunity to do so. We'll keep this going. I'm going to give out those top 10 players that I think Mora should prioritize. Let me shout out a couple of partners, though. Let me talk to you about Brunt Workwear. Brunt's best-selling Marin work boots are built not only for the toughest job sites, they're completely waterproof. So whether it's rain, snow, your feet are going to stay dry. From oily workshop floors to muddy farm fields, everywhere in between, these boots are going to work great. They're stylish, they're comfortable, but they're incredibly durable. Brunt knows they have the best work boots on the planet, so they'll let you try any of their products on the job. Choosing work boots used to mean sacrificing comfort or durability. Brunt thought that was BS. They also thought it was ridiculous that a lot of those traditional brands that blue-collar workers had relied on for years and years kind of sold out. You know, they leaned into being fashion brands. Brunt, they want to make sure you get the best possible gear around. With temps dropping and the holidays coming up, it's time to treat yourself or the hardworking man in your life to real comfort. Skip the throwaway gift. Get him something built to last. Brunt Workwear. Our listeners get $10 off their entire order with the code DNVR at checkout. That's bruntworkwear.com. Use that code DNVR. Order today. Let them know you heard it here on the show. Hey, Colorado, did you know that Dick's Sporting Goods now has DNVR gear? You can find at most Front Range locations some of our awesome DNVR shirts. You know, the Broncos, the Nuggets, the Avs. They're super hot right now. No better time to rep any of our local teams. You can get those at Dick's Sporting Goods, or again, you know, I told you earlier about our sale. But Dick's Sporting Goods, they've got everything. They've got all the best footwear around. They've got the hottest apparel, brands like Nike, Adidas, Hoka, DNVR, and more. Get all the gear for baseball, football, soccer, you name it. Get your gear fast with free curbside pickup at your nearest store or easy shipping from Dicks.com. Every season begins at Dick's. Kind of wrapping up just the 2025 season in a review from a big picture standpoint. Obviously, they've got to hit on a quarterback. The inability to develop a quarterback has been CSU's biggest pitfall over the last 10 years. You have not had above average QB play since Nick Stevens, haven't had elite QB play since Garrett Grayson. That's tough, especially when you think about some of the schools that have hit on quarterbacks. I mean, you look at UNLV and what they've been able to do. Carson Strong at Nevada. Josh Allen, great NFL quarterback. Some of his college success is a little bit overblown. He was great, don't get me wrong, but it's just been a long time since CSU has had a guy who truly elevated the team. I felt like BFN had a chance to be that guy for a variety of reasons, never was able to put all his physical tools together. I don't think some of the scheme choices that CSU made these last couple of years really helped him. I don't think the revolving door at receiver did either, but it is what it is. No excuses. You invested far too much time in him after also investing a few years in Clay Millen to get the lackluster results that you got this season at quarterback. If Mora is going to succeed, I mean, you can have a great O-line, you can have, really talented players on defense. You don't have a quarterback, you're not going to compete for championships. It's as simple as that. Outside of like having an Ashton Gianti type running back where he's a Heisman candidate, the injury luck was a big deal. You need way more from the skill positions than what you got from CSU this year. The running backs didn't meet the potential. Some of that has to do with the O-line injuries. The receivers really disappointing, although I did like how Levon Brown and Tommy Maher closed the season a little stronger. I felt like that's the one thing Chestnut was maybe able to do, was get some of those guys out wide involved a little bit more, as well as maximizing Rocky Beers. I will credit him for that. They whiffed on too many guys in the portal. Aaron says, what are your thoughts on Mora pulling a few of the offers from kids offered by Collins and crew during the intern time period? All right, let me touch on that in just a second. Let me wrap up with this. I whiffed on too many guys in the portal. People like Hankins, I thought would be a big deal. He struggled. There were a few of those who just did not meet the expectation, and then injuries were a factor in that as well. I do credit those who fought until the very end. Wrapping it up offensively, the Rams averaged 18.5 points per game. That ranked 124th out of 136 FBS teams. They gave up 30.8 points the other way. That was 113th out of 136 teams. Not great, Bob. If I was going to give an offensive MVP, I'd give it to Rocky Beers. Defensive MVP, Owen Long. Special teams MVP, Brian Hansen, although you could make a case for Javion Kennard. And then the best, most impactful transfer, although you could throw Rocky Beers in that conversation as well, I'm going to give it to Lamondre Joe. I thought he was awesome this year. One of CSU's leaders in sacks. Really productive DB. I wish he had multiple years of eligibility remaining. All right. Aaron wants to know, what are my thoughts on Mora pulling a few of the offers from some of the kids offered by Collins and crew? I did see the post from the Ralston Valley quarterback, I think it has since been deleted. It was also kind of ambiguous wording. I'm not sure the offer was 100% pulled more so, or if it was basically like you can come, but realistically you're not going to compete here. I don't know what you were told before, but you're not going to compete in this quarterback room. Is it better to sign a kid with no opportunity to realistically compete and basically put them in limbo than to tell the truth? That's a tough balance. I did not like that they were offering as many guys as they did. I know that was approved by Weber, but I think it put a lot of kids in potentially an unfortunate position, and it's looking like that proves to be the case. The reality is college football isn't as romantic as it once was, and the pressure to win is so consistent that I think I've got to give a coach full control of roster management, and that's really all I can say about it. I do feel for some of those kids. Again, I wish more that they didn't make those offers in the first place, because this was a very likely and realistic outcome in that scenario, and it's a shame. College football is pretty slimy. It is what it is. Justin Marshall has entered the portal, or is going to enter the portal. I don't think he technically can until tomorrow. Not surprising. A talented back who, like a lot of players, flashed early on in his career, but just never really put it all together at CSU. He struggled to stay on the field. Injury issues were pretty consistent with him. Very explosive. I mean, you see the run he had, I think it was against Hawaii, was an example of why you tried so many times to get him in the mix. Had 1,000 yards over these last couple of years combined, but never really reached his full potential after really coming on strong at the end of that 2023 campaign. And then by the end was sort of the odd man out. Dupree was kind of the lead back, and then Lloyd Avant was really productive at times this year. Javion Kennard started to flash late, and Marshall sort of became the odd man out. I honestly thought he would portal after last year, with Dupree very clearly being, the lead guy coming into this season. So I'm not surprised. I wish him well. He's a good kid. Really hope he can stay healthy. That's been a big issue for him. We'll see where he ends up. It is a bummer to lose a player of his caliber, but with some of the injury struggles, I think it's probably best for him to get a fresh start at this point as well. But with that in mind, who are the 10 guys that CSU should prioritize the most? I want to add a couple of caveats here. I did not factor in guys that have already announced that they're leaving. In theory, Mora could convince somebody like Jalen Dupree to stay. If that were to happen, that'd be awesome. I don't find that super realistic. So I would probably put BFN on this list had he not already, posted about his intent to leave, just because it's hard to come by quarterbacks. And while I wouldn't want him to be the de facto starter going into the year, would certainly want them to bring in multiple guys to compete. The same thing I would say, like, ideally you'll hang on to Jackson Brousseau. Why? Because he's experienced. You never know what could happen from a freaky injury standpoint. He's a good teammate. He stood by the Rams in a year from hell. He's a good locker room guy. Like, I don't want him to be the starter next year. I don't think that would put CSU in a good spot, but you would like to hang on to him. Just because somebody's not included on this list does not mean that I don't think they have value, or that I don't think that they should talk about. I also basically only talked about players who actually were on the field this year. So I've been really high on some of the youngsters like Cannon Valenzuela. I think he's got a really bright future. I really hope he sticks around. We didn't really see much from him this year. AJ Noland did not end up making this top 10, but he is in the conversation for me, and I really hope that he does stay. All right. With that in mind, I've got Philip Ocon and Ader Uriana Baranchea on the list. I have Tanner Morley as well. Tanner Morley, I think, would be in the top 3 conversation if you were doing this 1 through 10. I didn't technically rank it. I just came up with 10 guys. But Tanner Morley is one of the most important players to keep. But I think Philip Ocon and Ader, although they're young, they struggled at times this year going up against far bigger, more experienced players. I think that the reps that they got this year were really valuable. And if you could have some continuity in the trenches next year, You're already going to have a lot of new pieces at the skill positions, likely a new quarterback. Having some continuity in that O-line is important. And if I were to pick any of the assistants who I would ask to stay on, if I was Jim Mora, I think Bill Best has done a good job with his position group as anybody on staff these last couple of years. He's got a lot of local relationships. I've done a good job recruiting the intriguing, prospects coming out of the state, especially on the O-line. A lot of those guys have gone P4 in the end, but I think he's been really, really accurate when it comes to targets and them being able to translate at the FBS level. And I think what he's done developing some of these guys has been really big. Those guys are young. I mean, Philip Ocon was able to play center or guard. You could say the same thing about Ader, guys breaking their hands, switching with two hands. Like that's insane to be able to snap the ball with either hand. I really would like those guys to stick around. And I think Tanner Morley is probably going to have some big time offers, maybe coming off an injury that cools down some of his interests. But I really would like continuity. And because of that, I had 3 offensive linemen in the top 10. I think teams are built from the trenches out. I did not put Mukendi Wakalanji on this list. He told me specifically he's coming back after the Hawaii game. Things could always change, but I'm operating under the assumption that he'll be back. The most veteran player on the roster. He stuck around to this point. I'd be surprised if he left, but you never know. I just wanted to add that for context. Keeping in the trenches on the defensive side of things, I have both Andrew Lorich and Jack Moran. Jack Moran really came on strong as the season progressed, and I feel like Lorich quietly, despite being in a brutal spot, despite having so many moving pieces around him, having so many young guys, really no experience around him, was a great run stuffer. He's a guy who plays really hard. Having 3 fumble recoveries against New Mexico is crazy. But 30 tackles for Andrew this year, 27 total for Jack Moran. Jack being a legacy athlete, you would assume you've got a better chance of hanging on to him. You never know, though. I don't want to ever speak for these kids. But Lorich, I do like a lot, and I hope they're able to hang on to him. Any continuity you can keep in the trenches is a major win. You can recruit receivers in the portal. It's really hard to build a functional offensive or defensive line in one cycle through the transfer portal, and I think we've seen a lot of examples of that these last couple of years. I would put Jackson Warren in this conversation. I really went back and forth on it. My gut is that he's not going to be back. I don't want to speak for him. That's just my gut. I'm not reporting it. I just feel like he's a guy, if he could stay healthy, his ceiling is really high, and it's hard to find athletes that have that type of size. I mean, you saw it in that Washington game. He is a mismatch because he's too big for linebackers, or he moves too well for linebackers, and he's too big for corners. I'm really high on what he could be if he could ever stay healthy, what he could possibly be. An NFL background guy like Mora, he's going to really understand the importance of the tight end position. You're losing Rocky. If you could hang on to Jackson Warren, that would be big. 7 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown this year. Only played in like a game and a half, though. I did put cornerback CJ Blocker on this list. He played a lot. Still got a couple years of eligibility, 23 tackles, 3 PBUs this season. He runs as well as anybody on that defensive side. Not quite as physical as Jahari Rogers or Lamondre Joe especially, but I like what he brings to the table. You're losing a lot of experience out wide, being able to hang on to guys like him or Dylan Phelps, who offers some positional versatility as well. You could slide him into the nickel or play him outside. But I think CJ Blocker, the Utah transfer, you would like to hang on to him. That's 7 guys, I think. I would love to hang on to Lloyd Avant. He'd probably be number 2 on my list if I was doing this by a true ranking. 90 carries for 417 yards and 5 touchdowns, plus 24 catches for 261 yards and a TD. Brings you some explosiveness in the kick return game. As far as an every down back goes, I think Avant could be a 1,000-yard rusher. I think Javian Kennard, his home run hitting ability, what he brings in as a pass catcher, that's all really intriguing. Both those guys, as far as like the skills position, those would be the 2 most important people you could hang on to, just behind like Tanner Morley on the offensive side of things. And then obviously Owen Long. Like if he's got to be number 1, 151 total tackles, 2 sacks, 5 PBU, couple of fumble recoveries. He is going to be tough to hang on to. I know he already has a ton of big schools, in the DMs. You're also in a really tough spot if you're CSU, because as incredible as he is, and he is as good as any linebacker I've covered, you can't give quarterback money to a linebacker when you need to bring in multiple QBs. Like Ohio State, schools like that, they can afford to throw a couple $100K at somebody like Owen Long because they've got money to blow. You're going to have to be really creative and really intentful with the way you distribute your money in the portal this year, because you're going to need to bring in a lot of guys. And when you have to sign a quarterback, that's 6 figures plus. So it's going to be tough. I will be rooting for him. I'll understand what he decides really either way, because I know the type of schools that are coming after him right now. It's a lot like what I said about Cayenne Evans. It's tough to turn down that type of money and those type of brands. I don't love it. I'm not rooting for it. Obviously, I think he could be a legend. I think he could leave with a Joey Porter type legacy, go on to the NFL, be forever beloved. We've seen, Shaq, we've seen a lot of Rams go on to develop here. Are you going to be prioritized at a bigger school the same way you are here? That's what I would be selling if I'm Jim Mora, as well as those connects to the NFL, my ability to get you there. You're going to have NFL coaches and NFL scouts around because of all the relationships that Jim Mora has established over the years. That's my top 10, though. Again, just because I didn't list somebody doesn't mean I don't think you should try and keep him. You'd love to keep Jace Bella. He's got 1 year left after, what he's shown this year. But those are the top 10 guys to me. Let me shout out a couple of partners. We still got some hoops takeaways to get into. If you've got questions, comments, throw them my way. We've got to do the Mountain West Football Power Ranking. I want to talk to you about Fire on the Mountain, though. Fire on the Mountain is Denver's favorite local wing joint. They feature hormone-free, antibiotic-free, cage-free wings. They've got 15 super flavorful, made-from-scratch sauces, from mild to insanely hot and everything in between. An incredible craft beer list. They've got killer cocktails. They've got awesome specials, too. $5 beers on Mondays, happy hour all day Tuesdays. That sounds dangerous. Sounds fun, though. Wagyu beef blend burgers. They've got all kinds of appetizers, dressings, nearly everything. They've got vegan options. They've got a lot of fun stuff. Whatever you're into, try their insanely hot El Jefe challenge. It's the spicy wing eating challenge. We boast the happiest, most overeducated, overqualified employees in the service industry due to their generous benefits. Check out Fire on the Mountain. Again, they've got awesome deals. We've got them at some Broncos tailgates. Make sure you don't miss out on those awesome deals. $5 beers on Mondays, happy hour all day Tuesdays. Check out all of their Denver locations. All right, I also want to shout out Coors Light. When you're juggling work, life, everything else, it can get stressful. I had to really work hard not to lose my chill this weekend. I didn't get sucked into the Twitter beef. I could have. I didn't. Typed and deleted a few responses, but hey, we're maturing. That's what it's all about. You got to do the little things. Go on a walk, take deep breaths, woo-saw, whatever you got to do, choose chill. Then when you are in the right state of mind, when you're kicked back, maybe you got the game on, maybe you've got some buds over, maybe you've got some Fire on the Mountain wings sitting on the table, crack open an ice cold Coors Light. It's mountain cold refreshment, cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged for a smooth finish. Make the most out of the times you choose chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Visit CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Bear. Okay. Let's do the Mountain West Football Power Ranking. If you've got questions, comments, etc., throw them my way. I see some comments in reference to the UConn players entering the portal. We'll certainly keep an eye on them, as well as former UConn commits. Emmanuel, the quarterback, has recently decommitted from UConn. He's kind of a dual threat. He's somebody to keep an eye on. Obviously, they've got an OT that just entered the tackle, a couple of DBs already. We'll have a better idea of what that might look like in the coming days. It'd be kind of pointless for me to just speculate over every single hypothetical player that may or may not sign with CSU. It is Toyota-thon. Let's hear it. Shout out to the homies at Toyota. We don't have a read for them today, but we're always repping them, always on brand. Let's do a Mountain West football power ranking. Then let's give some basketball thoughts. We have so much to talk about today. It's unfortunate. CSU remains in the dweller. They come in at 12. I mean, tough to argue, when you close the season as poorly as CSU did. I've got San Jose State at 11. Weirdly cost Hawaii a chance to play for a conference title, but a really underwhelming season for them as a whole. I wondered if that was the case. I didn't understand their preseason love other than a favorable schedule, I suppose. And even then, I just, what they lost in the front seven, losing Nick Nash at receiver, they weren't the same team, and that's not surprising. I've got Wyoming at 10. Offensively, they were a disaster this year. They had like a top 25 scoring defense, still going to finish with a losing season. That's absurd. I've got Nevada at 9. They got thumped by UNLV to close the season, but they won a couple of games before that. Good for them. I jokingly get into a lot of nonsense with like Nevada media and fans. I made a joke today because they're still so sensitive about the Norvell stuff. They've got to let go. They've got to move on with their lives. I think we're going to have to mute a lot of UConn folks. They're not used to success, so they don't know what it's like to get a coach poached. I mean, it'd be like if we were still tweeting at Florida fans all these years later, like move on with your life. This is what the game is, but good for them, I guess. Air Force at 8, just because they're probably the most consistent of the bottom 5 teams. And I think if you were to put this into tiers, like you would have a tier of these 5 and then the other 7, I suppose it would be. I got Utah State at 7, Fresno State at 6. Fresno State's lack of consistency really maddening. We cost them an opportunity to play for a conference title, so at least we got to play spoilers for someone after they kind of played spoilers for us the year before. Not a lot to feel good about, but a little bit of payback. We suck, but at least we cost you that. Hawaii at 5, still bummed that they blew an opportunity. How fun would it have been to have Hawaii, New Mexico as the Mountain West Championship game? That would have been epic. I've got San Diego State at 4 after blowing the game against New Mexico in 2 OT. I've got Boise State at 3. I still think San Diego State is better than Boise. I actually think they're a more complete team than UNLV. 2. I think New Mexico and San Diego State are the most complete teams out of these top 4, which is crazy that it wouldn't be Boise. Just don't trust UNLV's defense. But Boise 3, UNLV 2, New Mexico 1. I know that the Mountain West Championship is Boise versus UNLV. I don't care. I ranted about it earlier. New Mexico got screwed. I think they have already beaten UNLV head to head. I think if they played Boise right now, they would beat them. So that's where I'm at. I genuinely believe that. Incredible story. Cool to see Jason X sign that contract extension. Probably gone after next year. I think he bounces when Wisconsin opens, but cool for the Lobos. They deserved a little bit of fun after just a really tough couple of years. I mean, you look at what they've lost in the portal, the coaches jumping ship. It's been tough for our friends in Albuquerque, and I'm going to miss New Mexico. I won't miss playing Air Force. I will miss playing New Mexico every year. Shout out to our guy, FS Shock 5 says, we appreciate you, Justin. I appreciate you too, Boo. I appreciate all of you guys tuning in with us. It's been a long year, but the future is hopefully bright, and we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about coming up, including big matchup against CU on Saturday. I'll be there. Our guy Ryan Green will be there, so we'll get a classic RG spotlight, which I can't wait to see. Hosting CU, big time matchup, really important for the Rams. They did what they realistically needed to do in the MTE. Yes, you would love to win the event, go 3-0, obviously. But I said at the beginning of the year when we were doing kind of our non-conference outlook, I said going into the event, go 2-1, pick up a couple of quality wins, and you feel pretty good about yourself. You had a chance to beat Virginia Tech in the opener, who I think is going to be a tournament team, despite going 4 of 22 from 3-point in that game. You had a shot to win, all things considered. You'll take that. I do wish they would have gone to the rack in that scenario. Felt like they had a lot of time to settle for a step back 3, but it was a good look. It was online, and that's a pretty common shot within this offense. So it's tough to nitpick too much. If you hit it, obviously you're feeling great. I was really impressed with the toughness that CSU men's basketball showed in this event. Those were 3 highly physical games. Those felt like matchups against San Diego State, and I think those will be beneficial for the Rams to have gone through that, especially with CU coming up. They're a big athletic team. Their size could potentially pose some problems for you. I think having gone through this experience is going to be really big for CSU. you're 6-2 on the year. If you beat CU at home, which you're going to have to, if you want to realistically, outside of doing something historic in the conference slate, to realistically have a chance at being an at-large team, you need to win this one at home. It'd be huge for the metrics, especially after blowing that game against DU, which looks worse and worse. I mean, Wyoming beat them by like 60. Wyoming looks good, though. They had Texas Tech on the ropes. That's a scary matchup. Sundance has a squad. Wyoming and CU are both much improved from this past year. So gulp, that could be an issue potentially. Really nice performances from Pasquarelli and Rechsteiner. Rechsteiner had a massive shooting day 2, and he really struggled against Virginia Tech. I mentioned it going in that I worried about the emotion being too much. We saw it against CU with Nate Clifford kind of just trying to do too much. I felt like there was some of that. I thought after that game that you should start McIver the next day, and then I actually credit the staff to sticking with him. He goes on to have a monster shooting performance. And then, what we saw from Pasquarelli going 7 of 7 from deep was insane on day 3. But this rotation is very much still in flux. It is going to be difficult because you can see what they like about every guy, and every guy brings something to the table, but every guy has a couple of flaws. It's not a Neek, year 4 or Isaiah year 5 scenario where you've got these really experienced, polished players. You do have a couple of experienced guys in Jevin Mooney, who I think is awesome. The unsung hero of the team right now. Let me see what his stat line was on Sunday. It was similar to the day before, but he only had 3 points, or 7 points, excuse me, but 6 rebounds, 10 assists. Like, he just does the little things. He was able to advance the ball a couple times when the Rams were struggling with some full court pressure at times in those first 2 games. Love what he's bringing to the table. I do think that we'll see more and more JoJo. I think we'll see more Jace Butler over the course of the season because of what they bring to the table defensively. What this team does on the defensive side is ultimately going to dictate the ceiling. But while guys like Rechsteiner have some flaws defensively, I mean, he's a liability defensively. All due respect to the guy, he can't guard anyone. But he's a bucket getter, man. And when he starts shooting the ball and when he starts to feel it, like, he can be Murray-esque. I've said that about him. Jamal Murray, that is. Same thing with Pasquarelli. Those guys are flamethrowers when they get it going. Would like to have a little bit more defensively from Rechsteiner. Augie, I feel like, has struggled on both sides of the floor, which has been a little surprising to me. Done a good job of getting to the free throw line, but I thought we'd see a little bit more impact from him. But I like the direction this team is trending, and I think it's still kind of up to debate who, in a really tight game, if it's 66-66, like, who can put the ball on the floor and create something. We saw at times in that Virginia Tech game, they struggled against the on-ball pressure that the Hokies were providing. That worries me a little bit. I feel like JoJo is the best pure facilitator. I like Rechsteiner, and I think he should be playing, 25-plus minutes a night. I think he's better suited to be a 2 guard than he is a true point. But also, I got to watch Isaiah Stevens for half a decade, and he plays the position like a modern John Stockton. So I'm going to have to factor that in, when I'm judging, what I'm seeing in front of me. I like what Aaron's saying about YO plus 900 to win the Mountain West regular season. Sneaky value there. The league's wide open. Utah State has certainly proven to be the top dog. Pasquarelli 8 for 8. I believe you're right. Did I say 7 of 7? Shout out to Matt in the Toyota chat. Just a couple of final takeaways here before we get out of town. 45% from 3-point over that 3-game stretch, despite going 4 of 22, is pretty impressive. 16 of 22 against South Florida is going to help those averages a little bit. But this team has a lot of shooters. They've got a lot of guys contributing too. 7 players right now, averaging 7.5 points. You've got basically 3 guys in that 14 to 15 range. I like that. I like that it's very well-rounded across the board. You're not dependent on one guy doing everything. They give up 31 offensive rebounds between the 2 wins. They need to rebound better. They need to shoot free throws better, man. The numbers as a whole are still good because they were like unsustainably good from the line for the first 4 games, but the last 4, it's been discouraging. Missed 5+ free throws in each of the last 2 games. Missed 9 against DU. It's a big reason they lost that game. You've got to knock down your free throws. You've got to limit the offensive rebounds the other way. I think Bemba being out there helps you. Even if he's not racking up rebounds, he's just so physical, he clears space for everybody else to get those rebounds. They're averaging a little over 19 assists per game as a team. I love that. Want to see more from McIver and Butler. I mean, I want to see them get more opportunities is what I'm saying. I just think defensively they elevate you. I think you see Rex Snyder's minutes maybe go down just slightly. And then I think, Japa, McConan, Slater, probably kind of the odd guys out of the rotation this year. I still think we'll see some Japa, especially when, you're dealing with injuries in the post. But I like the way this team is trending right now, and I'm excited about their potential. We are in overtime, so let me throw it to OT real quick. Intriguing comment here in the Toyota chat says, I'd like to see Muniz play the point and go with a big lineup. Booth at the 3, Jorgensen and Bemba in the front court. I do wonder if you'll see some of that, to be honest with you, based on the fact that they gave it to the ball to Jevin in the crunch time against Vatek when JoJo and Brandon were kind of struggling to advance the ball. Credit Vatek. I mean, they were hounding the Rams defensively. But that was something that stood out to me, and I don't think that's nothing. The fact that they're willing to put the ball in his hands. I don't know if he's necessarily like a point guard, but I think he can facilitate some things for you offensively, kind of like what Neek did for you last year. And I mean, the size and the length of this team is one of their strengths. So leaning into that and then having, sharpshooters like Pasquarelli and Rex Steiner and Butler to accent that, I think that's the makings of a pretty good team. Now, they need Bemba to be healthy. On both ends of the floor. I know he struggled to make free throws against DU. He looked a little rusty, but they are a better team when Bemba's on the floor, and they need him to make an impact. Just kind of some final thoughts. I don't want to go super long today. We've got a lot of content coming your way these next couple of days, but shout out Trey McBride on a Hall of Fame trajectory past Jimmy Graham as the fastest tight end in NFL history to record 400 total catches. I'm interested to see how signing day plays out with the high school class. And again, I just feel like CSU hired Jim Mora at a perfect time, because had they waited another week, I think your options would have been pretty slim, and you're probably having to gamble on somebody at that point. All right. CSU Rams Daily says, do you have any idea of how much CSU has to spend on their roster? I was a couple million last year from what I've heard across the board. I imagine it'll be a little bit more than that this year. Most teams like CSU, Boise are in that $3 to $5 million range. This is kind of where you're at with the roster, which is more than people think. People talk about CSU like we're the sisters of the poor or something like that, especially UConn fans. I'm like, have you seen your facility? I don't know. Maybe look in the mirror a little bit. That's all I've got for you guys today. Shout out to everybody for rocking with us. Shout out to Yaya for producing an awesome show. Thank you for listening to the DNVR Rams podcast presented by Branded Bills. Head to brandedbills.com. Use that code BBDNVR for 15% off of your first order. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.